Okay, hello everybody, and welcome to middle grade story time at South Holland Library. We are still reading Wayside School Beneath the Cloud of Doom, and it is written by Lewis Sacker and illustrated by Tim Heitz, and it is published by HarperCollins Books. So we're on chapter 7, and here's the little illustration at the beginning, and let's go ahead and get started. So, Mac was a curious kid. When Miss Mush served chicken fingers, he asked her how many fingers a chicken had on each hand. After lunch, he played basketball. Besides playing, he was also the self-appointed announcer, describing every shot, every pass, and every dribble. Jenny finally told him to put a sock in it. Only then, when he stopped talking, did Mac remember that he'd left his catcher's mask in the cafeteria. Mac liked to wear his catcher's mask for all sports, including basketball. He was a curious kid. The cafeteria was on the 15th floor. Mac found his mask right where he'd left it, but by then it had hardly seemed worth it to go all the way back down to the playground. So he continued on up to the 30th floor. And there, just outside his classroom door, was the most curious thing that Mac had ever seen. Next to the wall was some sort of giant closet. It hadn't been there before lunch, but it wasn't what made it curious. The closet was wrapped up in heavy chains and locked with a giant padlock. Mac moved closer. Behind the chains, he could see double doors with a steel bar clamped across them. Several signs were taped to the doors. "Keep back! Do not open doors! Danger! Call the fire department if you smell something unusual." Mac sniffed, but all he could smell were chicken fingers. Behind the chains and the steel bar, each door had its own lock. He could see two keyholes, one red and the other green. He put on his catcher's mask just to be safe and tried to open one door, then the other. They wouldn't budge. He tried to peer through the keyholes, but they were too tiny. He knocked on one of the doors. It seemed to be made of thick wood. "Anyone in there?" he called. There was no answer. He knocked again. Knock, knock, knock. And then pressed his ear against the side of the closet. Still nothing. "What's that?" asked Dee Dee, coming up the stairs. Mac shrugged. Dee Dee read the signs aloud. "Keep back. Do not open doors. Danger." She tried one of the doors. "I think it's locked," said Mac. More kids made it up the stairs. Each one stepped at the closet, read the signs, and then tried to open the doors. Parents kicked the doors. Jason rattled the chains. "Look, it's one long chain," he determined, "wrapped around 4 times. "What do you think is inside?" asked Leslie. "Snakes," said Paul. He was afraid of snakes. "Spiders," said Rhonda. She was afraid of spiders. "Monsters," said Allison. She loved monsters. Miss Gorf was the worst teacher they have ever had. "Give me a boost," said Mac. Jenny cupped her hands and Mac stepped up, first into Jenny's hands, then onto the steel bar. He gripped the edge of the closet and tried to shimmy up. "Get away from there!" shouted Miss Jules. "All of you!" She had returned from the teacher's lounge only to see the children hanging all over the closet like monkeys. "Mac, get down now!" Mac tried to hop down, but his foot got tangled in the chains, and he fell onto his back. "Ooh, I think I broke my tailbone," he complained. "You're lucky that's all you broke," said Miss Jules. "What's inside?" asked Terrence. "Never you mind," said Miss Jules. "Don't you children know the meaning of danger? You are not to go anywhere near my closet. Don't look at it. Don't even think about it. It's not there." "But I can see it," said Mac, still lying on the floor. "It's not there," Miss Jules insisted. "But no ifs, ands, or buts," said Miss Jules. Everyone shuffled inside the classroom. Mac was still on the floor. He stood up and adjusted his catcher's mask, which had become cockeyed when he fell. He took one last look at the closet that wasn't there, then walked into the classroom more curious than ever. Chapter 8. Science. 29 hands were raised. There were only 28 kids in Miss Jules' class, but Joy stretched both her arms high in the She figured it doubled her chance of being chosen. She waved them back and forth and around in circles. Pick me, begged Bibi. Pick me, Miss Jules, urged Calvin, sitting next to Bibi. Sorry, Calvin, you're too heavy, Miss Jules told him, and your toes are too tiny, Bibi. Todd sat behind Joy, but Miss Jules couldn't see him behind Joy's helicopter arms. Okay, Joy, said Miss Jules. Everyone else groaned. Joy was all smiles. You lose, losers, she said as she headed toward the door. This week, for science, they would be studying clouds. Luckily, Miss Jules' class was on the 30th floor. It was the classroom closest to the sky. Last week, they studied dirt. That wasn't so lucky. By the time they made it to the ground, science was over, and they had to turn around and trudge back up. Everyone brought their science notebooks and gathered just outside the door. By the closet, that wasn't there. Miss Jules put her hand around Joy's waist. Alley-oopsie, she called out and lifted Joy straight up. Joy giggled. That was why Miss Jules had chosen Calvin. He was too heavy for her to lift. Miss Jules set Joy on the top of the closet. Just above her, a trap door led to the roof. Joy stood on her tiptoes and pushed it open. This was why Miss Jules hadn't chosen Bibi. Her toes weren't long enough. A rope ladder tumbled down. One by one, the children climbed the rope ladder to the roof. Be sure to stay away from the edge, Miss Jules called up to them. There was a safety railing around the edge, but it was for taller people. Miss Jules was afraid her students could slip right under it. She was the last one up through the trap door. When she reached the roof, she saw everyone standing at the edge. What did I just say? She demanded. Everyone stared blankly at her. Alley-oopsie? Asked David. Well, at least somebody was paying attention, said Miss Jules. She told everyone to take 2 steps back and to sit on their bottoms. But then we'll be farther away from the clouds, Matt complained. Sometimes safety is more important, said Miss Jules. She pointed out the clouds to her class. That out there is a cumulus cloud. Some of the students wrote it down in their notebooks. Bibi drew a picture of a sleeping giant. The cumulus cloud was his pillow. And that's a cirrus cloud over there, said Miss Jules. Bibi drew a picture of flying angels. Hundreds of white feathers had fallen from their wings and had swirled into a cloud. Bibi could draw really fast. What kind of cloud is that one, Miss Jules? Asked Benjamin. He is pointing at a dull, dark cloud way off in the distance. Miss Jules gasped. If Bibi were to draw it, her picture would look exactly like the inside of a vacuum cleaner bag, while the vacuum was still on. But Bibi had never seen the inside of a vacuum cleaner bag while the vacuum was still on, so she couldn't draw it. Everyone back to the classroom, Miss Jules shouted. Double quick! The children scrambled to the trap door. Hurry, ordered Miss Jules. Some fell right through, others got rope burns. Miss Jules didn't worry about little things like that. She was the last one through the hatch, sitting atop the closet that wasn't there. She tossed the ladder back off on the roof and locked the trap door. She climbed down, stepped onto the chains and step bar. The children were waiting quietly inside the classroom, hands folded on their desks. Miss Jules walked to the side of the room and looked out the window. Either the cloud was moving closer, or it was getting bigger, or both. What kind of cloud is it, Miss Jules? Asked Leslie. There are times when adults hide the truth from children so as not to worry them. But Miss Jules was a teacher, and this was science. Take a good look, boys and girls, she said, pointing out the window. Then, with a slight tremble in her voice, she said, That is a cloud of doom. The room darkened. And Chapter 9, The Gong. Louis, the yard teacher, was filling a green ball with air when the cloud of doom cast its gloomy shadow over the schoolyard. He felt an eerie chill as he pushed down on the air pump. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, and the next thing Louis knew, he was lying on the blacktop. He slowly sat up. He wiggled his fingers. He stuck out his tongue and moved it from side to side. He seemed to be okay. He stood up, still a little wobbly. Bits of green rubber were scattered across the playground. His air pump was on the other side of the dodgeball circle. The ball must have exploded from too much air, he realized. He always tried to put the maximum amount of air into each ball. The kids liked them bouncy. The bouncier, the better. He picked up a piece of green rubber, then another and another. There already weren't enough balls to go around. The school couldn't afford to lose another one. He'd have to sew it back together. In the end, he found 73 pieces. It was unusually dark for this time of day. He hoped he hadn't missed any. The gong, he remembered. He hurried to the principal's office, stuffing cotton balls into his ears as he ran. "You're late, Louis," said Miss Kidswater, but Louis couldn't hear him. He wheeled the giant gong out of the office to the bottom of the stairs. At one time, the gong had been bright and shiny, but that was before Louis's time. Now it was dull and heavily dented. A large mallet, also made of iron, hung from a hook bolted to the gong's wood frame. Louis unhooked it and then took a couple of steps backward to steady himself. The mallet was heavy, even for someone as strong as the yard teacher. He handed it to Mr. Kidswater, who easily raised it over his shoulder. Mr. Kidswater had thick arms, a thick neck, and a thick head. Louis started the countdown. 10, 9, 8. There was a red dot in the center of the gong. On the count of 1, Mr. Kidswater swung the mallet and hit it dead center. Gong! Despite the cotton balls, the sound rattled inside Louis's head and echoed up and down the stairs. Louis took the mallet from Mr. Kidswater and hung it back on its hook. He wheeled the gong off to the side just before a river of children flooded down the stairs. "Hi, Louis! Bye, Louis! See you tomorrow, Louis!" they called to him as they ran by. He smiled and waved, but all he heard was gong! "Why don't they ever say those things to me?" Mr. Kidswater asked a little while later as they were leaving the school together. "Maybe if you did something nice," Louis suggested. "Like what?" asked the principal. "Maybe let a kid ring the gong." "No way," snapped Mr. Kidswater. "That's the best part about being principal." "Or how about getting some balls for recess?" Louis suggested. "Too expensive," said Mr. Kidswater. "What if I pay for them?" said Louis. Mr. Kidswater laughed. "You? Where would you get that kind of money? Did you rob a bank?" "I have money," said Louis. "I've written some books from Wayside School." "You got paid for that?" Mr. Kidswater asked. Louis shrugged. Mr. Kidswater frowned. Louis hoped he hadn't broken a law. "Did you mention me in the books?" asked Mr. Kidswater. "Maybe once or twice," Louis admitted. "You don't say anything bad about me, do you?" Said Louis. "You should write a chapter about me," declared Mr. Kidswater. "Call it the best principal ever, with 3 exclamation points. "First, you would have to do something that makes you the best principal ever," Louis explained. "Like what?" "Let a kid ring the gong." This time, Mr. Kidswater didn't snap at Louis. He was thinking about it. Louis looked up at the gloomy cloud. He hadn't paid much attention to science back when he was going to school. He didn't know it was a cloud of doom. Had he known, he never would have made such a dangerous suggestion to Mr. Kidswater. And that is the end of that chapter, and we'll read more next week, so be sure to tune in, and I will see you guys soon.